What?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
What?
I got 2 words for you.
4 minutes, The Rock says, know your role.
Is having a fight. All-star wrestling, why that's for me. A super destroyer is on TV. He's got brute strength and all the moves. He's number 1, go spread the news. Tell Jesse the body and all the rest. He's the greatest, he's the best. A super destroyer Mark II. Stand back and watch what he can do. A super destroyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to episode 31 of the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. Today we're sending ourselves back in time to 1989 to take in NWA WCW's Great American Bash. Before we get into what can only be described as a blast from the past, see how Adam's doing. Adam, how's it going, pal?
Yeah, it's going fine, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Good.
I'm very keen to find out what you thought of this show. When I asked for your GIF form response of what you thought of it, you sent me quite a funny Reno Gattuso. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. I like that. That kind of summed it up pretty well, actually.
Yeah. I mean, as we go through it, I think there's some things in here I really enjoyed, and there's a whole nostalgia feel to the whole thing that I like. And some of the matches are pretty good. Some of them are not so good. And, I know plenty about late 80s WWF, but I hadn't really looked into late 80s WCW. And I think, there's similarities, but there's differences as well.
Yeah.
I think some of the in-ring product here, although it's not all great, is probably better than some of the in-ring that I was used to seeing from that era. But again, it varies.
It's interesting. You said it's certainly less polish.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
As well. But before we get into all that, let's have a look at July 1989 as it was. July 1989, Seinfeld screened its pilot episode on NBC in the US.
Wow.
When Harry Met Sally was released in cinemas.
Wow.
Did you go see that when you were
8? No, I didn't. No.
Could have been awkward if you were there with parents or...
Yeah, I wouldn't have enjoyed that.
We had some special birthdays that year, Adam. A man that's close to your heart, Gareth Bale.
Oh, okay.
One of the world's greatest wizards, not Chris Jericho. Daniel Radcliffe was born that year, the young man that would go on to play Harry Potter. And the world's greatest footballer and my number one crush, Alex Morgan, was born that year as well. That month of that year.
Oh, nice. I think you mentioned that to me at the time, and I encouraged you not to make the entire show about Alex Morgan. But we'll see,
Oh, yep. Let's not do that. You, music-wise, last time I asked you to try and guess something for the top 10. I'm not going to be cruel and do that to you this time, but I will tell you what the UK and US number ones were in July 89. Sonia, You'll Never Stop Me From Loving You in the UK.
Okay.
Recognise that one?
I recognise the name of the person, but not the song name.
Sonia. Not Sonia from EastEnders. And in America, it was Martika, Toy Soldiers.
Okay, I think I know that song.
You know, it was sampled on the Eminem.
Yeah.
Toy. Aye, that one.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. A golden age.
I definitely wouldn't have got those, so I'm glad you didn't ask me.
I think you've probably got a cheeky wee Simon Cowell produced Sonia album hiding in that music collection of yours somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, back when I had all the CDs, there was all sorts in there. So, yeah, they're long gone, unfortunately. I miss them.
Well, talking about a rogue bunch of misfits being all chucked together, let's get straight into this Great American Bash 1989 pay-per-view. This, I believe, was the first Great American Bash to be ran by the WCW after Turner Broadcasting had purchased the rights to NWA.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
We're in Baltimore, Maryland, with good old JR, Jim Ross, and Bill. Oh dear, I didn't take his name. Caudle?
Bob Cottle.
Bob Caudle.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed their banter back and forth pretty much throughout this.
Yeah, I think one of the things they always said about JR, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed his work when he was doing this kind of thing, is he tries to call things like they're real sporting events, and I think a lot of fans like that. Whereas he's clearly had to go a bit more, talk about the storyline once he's having his sort of glory run in WWE. But he's good here. He's definitely
They're quite subtle. Like JR and King almost dominate a WWF pay-per-view, whereas here it feels a little bit more, like you say, like a sports commentary. So we get into, as soon as we're on, we get some awesome intro music, and we're straight into a Triple Crown, King of the Hill, Battle Royal. Gimmick. So immediately there's 2 rings, because we know we're getting Wargames, so there's 2 rings, so they must have just thought, fuck it, let's just use these 2 rings as much as we can.
Yeah, and when I first saw it, I thought, okay, I know there is a Wargames match coming up, and I thought, so I assumed they've come up with, let's just do this Battle Royal. Then they thought, oh, wait a minute, we've got 2 rings we can play with here, so let's do things in a slightly more convoluted manner. It seemed a wee bit too gimmicky.
It did. So it's a Battle Royal featuring men who have been previous winners of other Battle Royals. They've won these crowns, so you've got all these guys, basically everybody that's on this card, plus some extras, coming down wearing these Burger King ridiculous crowns. And the concept is there's 2 rings, like we say. They all start in the 1 ring. To eliminate them, you must throw them into the other ring. And once you get into the other ring, you have to try and eliminate people over the top rope.
Yeah.
Whoever is left in the first ring and whoever is left in the second ring would then square off to decide who is the King of the Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, who came up with that concept? That is
and 50 grand for the winner.
50 grand for the winner. There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, going to throw out some names because impossible almost to say everybody that is in this match. But like I say, you've got the majority of people that are on the card. We had, who am I looking for? Scott Hall, Cowboy Scott Hall with his big tash and blonde hair.
Yeah, I think he's one of the only ones that's in this that I don't think was on the card.
Yep.
And when I heard his name, I was trying to sort of pick him out, but it's so hard when you're in this type of match, in this situation, to focus on any one thing.
Wasn't there?
Yeah.
Steiner brothers were in there. The Skyscrapers were in there. Ron Simmons was in there.
Yep.
A guy called Ranger Ross.
Yeah, I think that was my first Ranger Ross experience.
So yeah, we know what a battle royal's like. I don't. You've never enjoyed a battle royal, have you?
No, I mean, I think the whole idea why the
concept.
Yeah, the reason the Royal Rumble works is because they put a different spin on it and they had people enter gradually, and you could focus on individual things. It's just in this, it starts off as like just a melee that you can't really see what's going on, and then you end up having to try and focus on 2 rings as soon as there's 2 people in ring B, which makes it even harder to follow what's going on. It's a little bit of a mess.
It is a mess, and there's definitely no point in trying to break down this match.
No.
Suffice to say, Sid, who seems to be pretty new, I think round about this time, but is like massive, and even despite being a heel, the fans seem to absolutely love him.
Mm-hmm.
Sid and Bryan Pillman are the last 2 in the first ring.
Yeah.
I think Sid launches Pillman into the second ring. And in the second ring, after almost all the men have been eliminated, we end up with Dan Spivey, who is Sid's tag team partner in the Skyscrapers, and Dr. Death Steve Williams is the last two. So we've got tag team, Spivey gets rid of Williams, and we've got tag team partners set to face off against each other. But hold on, player.
I was hoping you were going to do something like that.
Theodore Long says, that is not happening on my watch. He is, of course, the Skyscrapers manager, and he says, we'll be splitting this cash. We're not fighting anybody. And despite doing that in the ring, he then goes backstage with in slow motion Gordon Soley and cuts the exact same promo again.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like what they were trying to do here, which is to obviously they've got these two huge monster guys in a tag team. It feels like they're going to push this tag team pretty far, and they want to make them both kind of look indestructible here. So they've basically just destroyed the field for this battle royal, and then not turned on each other, because obviously it's far too early in the storyline for anything like that. I noticed even during this, and I think it maybe becomes apparent later on in the tag match, the crowd really like Sid, but they don't seem to feel the same way about Spivey.
Yeah, agreed. We'll talk about that at that match. What was I going to say there? Well, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Gordon Soley.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a few things, like just listening to other podcasts and stuff like that, and I know he was also, I think, was it he and Bob Caudle were this like legendary announced team for a while, I think, right. A good bit before we get to this stage. I think, by the sounds of it, alcohol was often involved when it came to Gordon Soley. And knowing that and then watching this, I can see it, I think.
You see, that the first time we went backstage with him, I was like, oh, okay, this is, I mean, you know, like he's doing this sort of Mean Gene Okerlund part backstage, isn't he? But as it went on, and they essentially do interviews with him for every match, in advance every match, I was like, I quite like his style, actually. It's just nice and slow, methodical. I quite liked it. I like the logic of the tag team partners not fighting each other.
Yeah, and I thought it achieved what it needed to achieve, and it didn't, because of the nature of the match. It didn't feel like it hurt anyone. I wrote something about the fact that the first person who's fully like eliminated from basically the full match is Ron Simmons, who will go on to be world champion at a point. So it's not doing anyone any harm to get eliminated in this kind of thing. Yeah. And I think they were hinting at some storylines, because I'm sure Mike Rotunda is involved against Steve Williams, which must have been a storyline that I think they allude to a little bit later on, but just trying to keep some stories going on there. But yeah, it made sense, protect the big, strong looking new tag team. Yeah.
So from there, we go to our first singles match, and despite having just been thrown out mercilessly by Sid at this Battle Royal, we're straight back into Bill Irwin.
Yeah.
Taking on Flying Bryan, who is, of course, Bryan Pillman.
Yep.
What do you think of this match?
Now, I thought it was fine, but I was a little bit disappointed in a way, and I'll explain why, and hopefully it'll all make sense when I do this. So, see, when I was young, and I think I've mentioned this before, I saw Bryan Pillman doing his Flying Bryan stuff, and it looked incredible. And I remember watching it thinking, I've just not seen anything like this before. And I wonder if the fact that I've now seen this so much from so many different performers over so many years has kind of diluted how I feel about it looking back on it now. Which is a shame, because, you know, they're probably, I know you've had the likes of, you know, Jimmy Snuka, but there probably weren't an awful lot of high profile, high flying American wrestlers at this point in time. So I can totally see now how seeing it as a kid, I would have been like, wow. And then watching it here, I would have been like,
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like kind of like trying to watch a 1970s Brazil game and being like, all right, Pele was amazing.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah. I thought it was fine. You know, I think the JR is trying to sell Bryan Pillman as the real athlete. He mentions his Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. Straight in there, JR. Football.
And I think he's known as an announcer that did that a lot over the years. He always likes to talk about the real credentials of the guys. You've got like Bill Irwin, who I've got to say didn't evoke anything in me when I'm watching it, really. But he's trying to slow the match down, which is logical. Pillman's trying to keep it quick.
Because to start with, Pillman's flying.
Yeah.
Well, literally. But he's flying all over the shop, so he does quite a decent job of slowing it down, actually.
Yeah, and you've also got, I think they mentioned Pillman's on a winning streak at a point, and they keep talking about his heart, and, you know, the fact he doesn't give up, and he's in there against bigger guys most of the time, and he just keeps going, and you do start to see sort of some signs of that as Bill Irwin's taking over and physically dominating. But yeah, they're very much selling and positioning Pillman as the sort of smaller guy who just won't quit.
It's crazy the evolution of Pillman to what he ends up looking like around 96, 97 compared to this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Almost unrecognisable.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think what he became especially like right towards the end when he's the loose cannon character, and then he's in WWE as part of the Hart Foundation, it's so much about character work by this point, whereas the focus here is purely what's happening in the ring, really. And I suppose you can look at character from the Hart point of view, but it's storytelling in a match, whereas so much of the storytelling later on was beyond the match, if you like.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's not much to say about this. It's whoa, you're right.
Yep, I just half dropped my water bottle, but it's fine. We're all good.
Good. We've got it's a straight up babyface versus heel, flying about the place versus try to slow it down, try to chop him down. There's not much more to be said about it. Pillman manages to get the win after it gets launched into the other ring, and he counters that by diving off the top rope with a crossbody and getting the 1, 2, 3.
There was a good crowd reaction for his win, I noticed. So I think as far as the crowd are concerned, he's quite over at this stage. Certainly building quite a following, because it leaped out at me a little bit how big the reaction was.
Nice. It's something that I did notice, actually. The crowd were like well up for this. We spoke about the Canadian crowd the last time we spoke. Wasn't quite to that level, but they are well up for this. Like, yeah.
Are we Baltimore here?
Baltimore.
Yeah.
So we go from there back to Mr. Nice and Easy, Gordon Soley, with Paulie Dangerously, who is getting himself ready for his tuxedo match with Jim Cornette a couple of matches later.
Yeah.
And he cuts an aggressive, angry promo about how he's coming for Jim Cornette, he's going to ruin his knee. Is that real that he was a photographer before?
Yeah.
He mentions being a photographer in '86 when Cornette fell off a scaffold in a scaffolding match.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if the timeline definitely follows, but he definitely started off being a photographer. And do you know what? I think Cornette had as well early in his career. Right. Yeah. What did you think of Paulie cutting a promo here?
I love this Paulie Dangerously character. I love
this. Such a dick.
The nonsense, the mobile, or the sort of whatever that sort of phone that is, mobile phone, the
giant phone.
It's just arrogant, and I love it.
When I saw this in the sort of match listing, you know it's not going to be much of a match when it's starting off, but I was wondering how it positions itself, because you've got Jim Cornette, who I think for most of his managerial run was a heel. He was always, trying to find a way to help his guys win. And heel antics and the tennis racket and all that. But I can't imagine manager Paulie Dangerously being anything other than a heel. Yeah. But it becomes, I think, quite clear quite quick that, who's on what side here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we go to our next match. Get your frisbee and your sunglasses ready, Adam, because here come the dynamic dudes.
Oh,
This was awkward.
this was so weird.
Dynamic dudes appear to be park-dwelling cool dudes that throw frisbees to each other and have blonde hair and like bright colours.
Yeah.
That's the gimmick. And they grab some poor kid out of the crowd who is not interested in catching a frisbee from Johnny Ace. But they do it to him anyway. And they launch some frisbees into the crowd. I genuinely forgot that this was Shane Douglas and John Laurinaitis. They were almost unrecognisable. It was so funny.
See, I kept thinking when we were watching this, you remember when we were going through, was it when we were going through 98 that we saw some fantastic work from Shane Douglas in ECW, being like this total badass heel champion. And I'm watching this and I'm just thinking, wow. Wow.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
And the dynamic dudes are taking on the skyscrapers, who we've obviously seen win the Battle Royal. They've got the camera away down low to accentuate how tall they are as they're coming out. I immediately love the presentation. I'm like, yes, they look amazing. We've got Teddy Long, obviously, managing them. I love the whole obviously, they have to get in the ring. But when you're younger and watching stuff like this, I think that, it almost makes up 80% of it is what they look like and the whole gimmick.
I think they would have felt very at home on the WWF show at the time. I mean, you can see everything that Vince saw in Sid and why he was so desperate to get him and brought him back a couple of times. Do you know who made an appearance as a skyscraper as a one-off?
I do.
You do?
Mean Mark.
Yeah, Mean Mark. The masked skyscraper.
But he wore a mask.
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah. Yep.
The Undertaker himself.
Yep. A one-off appearance. Yeah.
There you go. What could have been?
Yeah, I mean, he could have had quite a career.
So, this is funny. There's quite near the start of this match, JR starts taking wild shots at WWF.
Yeah.
We are not bodybuilders. What else is he saying? He's referring to Jake the Snake. He says something like, they don't bring their pets to the ring. Yeah. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, that was quite something. I was watching and listening and thinking, oh, JR, if only you knew where your career is going to be taking you and where you would spend so many years. But yeah, he was firing off shots.
If only he knew that Ricky Steamboat was going to come out with a Komodo Dragon in about half an hour.
Yeah, I wonder when you've said what you've said, when that happens, if you're just sitting there thinking, oh, shit.
That's where the anger comes from, this podcast. So this match is not the greatest thing in the world. No. Apparently the criteria for being a skyscraper is no sell everything. Poor Johnny Ace almost dies in this match. I know I'm going straight to the finish, but oh my God.
Yeah, he definitely nearly just dropped him on his head. And that was a bad look. I didn't like that.
That was horrible, eh? It looked really bad.
Yeah.
That was Spivey.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I think Spivey spends about 95% of the match in as the legal man. The whole crowd, despite them being heels, are screaming for Sid and they go mad when he gets tagged in. And
then there's a point, I can't remember what he does, but he does something heelish and they start jeering him and he really revels in the jeering. He does a pose and everything.
Yeah.
But then they start cheering him again.
It's funny, eh? Class. So yeah, like that powerbomb that Spivey does on Johnny Ace, that should have finished the match, and it did finish the match.
Yeah.
Skyscrapers win. I'm sure the dynamic dudes go on to do amazing things in the WCW.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we come out of this with no doubt in our minds that we're to keep an eye on these skyscrapers. They're going to be a thing. And yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know if the dynamic dudes were more than glorified jobbers, but it's kind of how it came across in this match anyway.
Definitely did.
Yeah.
Like a Saturday night main event type guys for the Heart Foundation to run through or something.
Yeah.
Back to Gordon.
Yes.
Bring us back down to earth, and he's with Jim Cornette, who cuts a passionate promo.
Yeah.
He's ready. I believe him. Don't know about you, I loved it.
He's great at promos. Like, I think I probably didn't see, aside from him just speaking for somebody as a manager, I probably didn't see enough of his promo work. Because he's really good, and he must have done a hell of a lot of them, even just, for the Midnight Express and things like that. Because I think what I'll have seen more of is him just being next to, I don't know, Kamala or somebody like that at any given time. But yeah, it also struck me how young he looks.
I know, me too.
It's terrifying. Yeah, he talks pretty passionately. He talks about the fact he did injure his knee in the scaffold match in 1986, and he still has to wear a knee brace. But he says he'll get to Paul Lee even if both his legs are broken. Yeah, he's just a very good talker, Cornette.
Yes, he definitely is. And we go straight. Almost, he must have just hot-footed it straight through Gorilla, because we're straight into the entrances, and the crowd goes absolutely wild for Cornette. You'd think this was Hulkamania at its peak.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah, and the boos for Paul Lee as well. Yeah, the crowd are very much in Cornette's corner here.
Paul Lee's walk's amazing. He's had the same walk forever. That kind of cocksure swagger, I like it. I was not sure what to expect with this match. Tuxedo match, of course. The winner is the man who removes the other man's tuxedo. Sounds like something I probably wouldn't be that interested in watching, but I have to tell you, it's probably one of my favourite matches on this card. I actually really, really enjoyed it.
It works better than it should. And I think it's because they do a few logical things, because I think it's always in the back of your mind, especially after the promo, that Cornette is just going to go 100 miles an hour here. He's going to go after him. He's going to do everything to get to him. And then you've got the classic heel move from Paul Lee with the powder to the face, which, puts the heel well in control. And then he's using this massive phone on Cornette's knee, just smacking him with it. And it's I don't know how to describe it. It's ridiculous, but I was quite absorbed in it.
I was the exact same. I was laughing. I was listening to Cornette talking about this match, and he's like, and he's go to town on the knee, and then the stupid motherfucker started hitting me in the other knee.
Is there a bit of real life heat between these two? Because I'm sure I've heard, it might have been Bruce Pritchard at a point saying that they butted heads a lot when they were both in creative roles at WWE, but they're so similar, and that's maybe the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the whole thing is that they're essentially the same person. One's from New York and one's from the South, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you say, Heyman, Paulie Dangerously's got to town on the knee. At one point, Paul spits at him as well. I mean, he's really healing it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and he drops an elbow as well, but Cornette gets it the way.
Yeah.
I've wrote here, Cornette seems to be hulking up.
Yes, he does. He hulks up.
So Paulie, to counter that, goes back to the powder, but Cornette volleys the powder straight back in his face, which I was really impressed with, that he managed to actually hit his hand and knock it in.
I had there was one moment of commentary that just had me picturing Jerry Lawler here, but it's obviously a very different environment. Jerry Lawler from the Attitude Era, because at one point, and I'm sure I heard this right, Bob Caudle says, "Let's see some clothes come off."
Oh God! Said no one ever watching Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette. That's brilliant. So Yeah, I think this only goes like 6 minutes or something like that. But honestly, I was the same as you. I was quite absorbed. Like, you believe Cornette when he's going for the punches. He's throwing these punches like his life depends on it.
Yeah.
Eventually, he gets that tuxedo ripped off of Heyman, and he takes off up the aisle in his boxers or whatever. And the fans go wild.
Yeah.
That's good fun.
Yep.
That's like wrestling comedy done in a logical and sort of fun way, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. There's only there's one other issue I have with it, but
go on.
But I think it maybe comes in the promo that comes immediately next. There's something that's said between JR and Bob Caudle about this is, there's only room for one manager or something like that. And then we've got this guy, Gary Hart, who is a manager, who's completely uninvolved in this whole situation, who's talking about the great Muta, who's facing Sting later for the TV title. And I think Gary Hart ends up involved in about 3 matches from here till the end.
Yeah, I think he's with Terry Funk as well, isn't he?
Yeah, but they've just, forgotten about him in the Battle of the Managers.
I've never heard of him before. He's quite charismatic. I like the way he cut a good promo.
Yeah, I've no idea what happened to him, because he's obviously here and fairly prominent on this show. He's got some roles, but I don't know if I don't ever remember him being at WWE in any kind of role, which is it's a little bit surprising that I hadn't heard or seen more of him, because he seems pretty good in the role.
He does. So we're back with Gordon, like you say, is with Gary Hart, and I think they expected to be with the Great Muta, but Gary Hart tells us that he is currently meditating in preparation for his match with Sting for the NWA TV title, like you say.
Yeah.
How much do you know about the Great Muta?
A little bit, in that I'd seen a couple of his matches a little bit further on than this here.
Right.
But I remember him, like, they had this tournament, I don't know when this was, but it was a WCW tournament, which had all the big hitters in it, and there was a singles one and a tag one, and basically everyone fought everyone, and you got like 2 points for a win and 1 point for a tie and things like that. And somebody won at the end based on who had the most points and stuff like that, and I think he got beat in every match at tournament, which seemed that maybe the excitement about his arrival had kind of worn off by that point.
Well, at this point, they certainly do a good job of selling him as an exciting threat.
Yeah.
Anyway, we go back to ringside. We're not quite ready for Muta and Sting yet. This is... I could have done with this not being on this card. It's a tornado tag match between the Steiners and Kevin Sullivan and Mike Rotunda.
Yeah.
Tornado tag. You'd be better having them just have a brawl, stick the camera on them, have a brawl outside, backstage or something like that. Didn't like this at all.
Yeah, I assume, I can't remember when or how this all takes place, but the Varsity Club being the Varsity Club, there was a sort of natural heat with the Steiners, who I think at one point they wanted to join them, or they certainly wanted Rick to join the Varsity Club.
That context is helpful, that's good.
And then at some point, I think he was maybe affiliated with them for a bit, and then was just like, no, I'm going to go and do my own thing, and they didn't like that. And
Kevin Sullivan doesn't strike me as like Varsity Club type of guy.
No. I mean, Mike Rotunda, fair enough. But yeah.
I'm selling that.
Yeah. I think this was just, what's that phrase? It was just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like we've never seen the best of the Steiners. Anything we've watched, we've just never really seen Steiner, Liner, Frankensteiner, Mullet Scott, Runabout. We've just not seen that. We'll need to find that.
Yeah, because it's definitely out there somewhere. Because I remember being like, I used to get excited to watch them. That was a thing. Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't know how much more you want to talk about this match. I genuinely absolutely hate it. It actually annoyed me. I think I'd been enjoying everything up to this point, and I was just like, oh, this is just a mess.
Yeah, I don't have an awful lot of notes, but I've got something about Scott comes off the top turnbuckle with a high crossbody, and both Scott and Rick pin Sullivan to get the win. But yeah, I didn't write an awful lot of notes for it, so I probably wasn't too engaged with it, I don't think.
Cool. There was something what was I going to mention there? Oh, Rick Steiner's well over.
Yeah, he is. It's funny to think how it kind of turns out, because he, well down the line, he kind of gets lost in the shuffle when Scott becomes what is he? The freak?
Freakzilla, big Papa Pump.
Yeah, Big Papa Pump. I think, Rick kind of becomes the sort of forgotten man.
He does. It's funny because I was looking at WCW pay-per-views round about this time, a little bit further on, and the Rick's in main events as a solo performer as well. So
yeah,
it's funny. Guess who we're back with?
Yes,
Gordon. Just take your time, Gordon. And he is with a fresh-faced looking Sting, who is telling Gordon that he's trying to stay calm. He's trying to keep things serious, so we're very much in light-hearted, happy, babyface Sting.
Yeah, I think they refer to it as Surfer Sting, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
He doesn't cut a huge promo, he's just talking about ready to get out there and take on Muta. Yeah,
talks about his respect for Muta, I think, but has no respect for Gary Hart.
Poor Gary.
Yeah.
He does all the heavy lifting here.
Mm-hmm. Was Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert involved in this promo as well?
Excuse me?
Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
I was going to say to you, I think Sting had a guy with him, but you're all over it.
Well, it's Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Who is Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert?
Now, I'll be honest here. I'm going to have to look it up because it's not something I just know, but it's a name I recognise. So Eddie Gilbert he was married to Missy Hyatt. Okay. And Medusa. Okay. Not at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. Was he in a tag team or something? Was that a thing?
He was quite young as a manager.
Oh my goodness. He was quite young when he died as well.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Died at 33. He'd had a wrestling career. I don't remember. Somebody must have said his name because I definitely didn't look and think, oh, that's Hot Stuff.
There's Hot Stuff.
Oh
well.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Hot Stuff. So here we go, NWA TV title. Young Sting versus the Great Muta. I did not know what to expect with Great Muta. He came out with some crazy thing on his face. I thought, is he wrestling with that on? This looks like a creator wrestler that like a 6-year-old kid would have made. No, he takes it off and he's wearing red face paint. I thought this was brilliant. I really enjoyed this match.
Yeah, I think this was my favourite match on the card.
Right.
Really enjoy. I do like the main event as well, but this was really entertaining because, like you, I didn't feel like I'd seen a lot of Muta anyway. And there's at the start of the match when the announcers are saying something like, I think they say the Battle of the Paint, and I was thinking, no, don't do this. This isn't. And I was also kind of waiting for all of the Japanese wrestler the cliches and things like that, and we do see some of them, but maybe not to quite the extent that we have done on some other occasions. And I liked Gary Hart because he's doing quite a lot of things through the match, but a lot of them are quite subtle.
Mm-hmm.
I think right from the start, there's that he's basically distracting Sting, who goes after him, which allows Muta to jump Sting.
Yep.
And it's a lot of it is just little moments where he's looking like he's gonna reach in the ring and snatch a foot and stuff like that, but he doesn't actually do it quite a lot.
I like that as well. He's just been a pest basically.
Yeah, which I really liked, and you need something I always think is sadly missing from the current product is the heel manager. It seems like you just get, I don't know, Valleys now or Paul Heyman, or who does get involved and does some things like this, but it doesn't seem to be as much of a thing anymore.
They were doing it for a bit with Don Callis when he was with Kenny Omega,
Right.
in AEW. That was quite good. But you're right, it doesn't seem to be. I think how influential Bobby Heenan has been over the years.
Yeah.
Let's write to Vince. We'll tell him. Or Nick Khan, if he's the one running it, we'll write to him.
Yeah.
This is just so high tempo. They're just flying about all over the shop. And talking about that Japanese influence, I noticed JR at one point says that Muta had put Sting in an Oriental sleeper.
Yeah, he did.
Not just a sleeper.
There were a few moments from JR, because at one point as well, Sting clotheslines Muta, and JR says, an American clothesline, because Sting is made in the USA.
Oh, no. Come on. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
We've not mentioned the referee in this match. A very young Danny McBride.
Yeah.
Nick Patrick. I think that's who mentioned his name, and I was like, no way. Is it? It was.
Yep. Well, he's the ref at the start.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
Do you know what took me back to being a wee kid watching WCW on a Saturday was when Sting gorilla pressed him.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I remember this now.
Yeah. It used to be. He used to do that in most matches, didn't he? Yeah.
Obviously, as WCW, like when you were talking about Sting being involved with what we were watching in 1998, he's not going to be gorilla pressing Kevin Nash or Paul White or anybody. It's all giants. So I like that.
I always think when I see Sting, and it's in like this era where he's not covered up, he's ridiculously built and put together, and I remember hearing and seeing pictures of him and a young Ultimate Warrior when they were what were they called, the Blade Runners or something, when they were a tag team trying to break through, and they both looked ridiculous, but it always stayed with you with Warrior, whereas Sting, I think maybe because he started, the Crow gimmick and he covered up and things like that, you don't maybe think of it as much, but he was ridiculously built.
It's crazy to think that I've seen pictures of them together as well. They just look amazing together. It's crazy to think that they've both split off and went their separate ways. Both went to these face paint gimmicks and went right to the top of either company.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It would have been a fun match to have seen between the two of them. A wee dream match, that one.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
As long as Warrior's not wearing one of the flesh-coloured singlets.
I almost let myself forget about that.
My bad. We knew the mist was coming in this match, but how cool is any mist?
Yeah,
in a match?
Yeah, it is one of those gimmicks that I always liked to, kind of regardless who was doing it. Because I remember, who was it that used to do it in? Would it have been Attitude Era actually, or no? It was a few years after.
Tajiri did it.
Yes, Tajiri, who had all the fancy kicks and the like moves where he tied you up with his legs in your ropes. Yes, he was cool, but yeah, it's just a good gimmick.
It really is.
It's one of those where I remember even as a kid when I was probably quite naive to the whole thing, you would watch and you would see the mist and you'd be like, well, that can't be allowed, and then thinking to myself, how did he hold that stuff in his mouth? How's that actually happened? Just quite naive to how everything worked.
Simpler days, Adam.
Yeah.
So our boy, poor Nick Patrick, gets the mist in the face. He gets taken out of this match.
Yeah.
And then they make what I think is known in the business as a complete pig's ear of the finish. Do you think it was booked this way? Aye.
Yeah, I do. So we've got Tommy Young runs down to be the replacement ref. I've got some serious questions about the way this all unfolds. So it's I don't know what you would describe the move Sting does as. Is it like a bridge German suplex?
Aye.
Yeah.
I've got modified back suplex. That's me jumping in my Vince bag with modified.
So the the shoulders are counted. Somebody's shoulders are counted. The match is over.
Somebody's shoulders.
And then there's an indication that is it the announcers that first indicate something's not quite right here?
Uh-huh.
And what seems to have happened is that while Tommy Young, who is the ref that came down, has awarded the match to Sting, who executed the suplex, Nick Patrick, who's just had all this mist blown in his eyes and didn't really seem to be very aware of anything that was going on at that point, is adamant that Muta got a shoulder up. So did they? I mean, it was just a bit of a mess.
I wonder what the script is with Nick Patrick. Like, I wonder if he's someone's son or something. He just seems like a fool to me, and I don't know if that's like really good character play. But he's prominent in so much in, especially WCW wrestling history.
Mm-hmm.
But he just seems to make an arse of things. I don't mean like as part of the storyline. I mean, he doesn't seem very believable. He seems like an oaf.
Because I think they ended up, they used him in a few NWO angles as well, didn't they? Further down the line. He was the apparently corrupt, but he says he's not, and then does play it straight referee. And then I remember him in the Invasion angle having a match with Earl Hebner.
He did. Slobber knocker.
Yeah. Yeah, but this was a very messy finish.
It was. And I think they reference it later on, and I think they agree, or of course there's an NWA committee, isn't there? Mm-hmm. I think they say something like the committee have agreed to uphold or to put a pause on the title or something like that. Basically, they need to have a rematch and there's no champion. Yeah,
so because at the time, Muta leaves with the belt. Sting had gone in as champion. I think they mention it's Sting's first major championship.
Ah, right, okay. Nice.
So he's... I don't know if he's maybe already had like his match with Flair. He must have done, I think, that kind of made him. And then he's been just gradually working his way up the card. Nice. But he's, the referees have basically awarded, the two referees that are involved have awarded the match differently. Yeah. So there's currently no champion, but what they don't do a good job of is making that clear. And I was sort of thinking about the fact that I've heard this discussion quite a few times about what announcers actually know when you're going in to a show. And I mean, this came across as the announcers did not know how this was supposed to turn out, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we've obviously heard before that the WWE announcers have got Vince in their ear, essentially screaming at them whilst they're trying to talk. Whereas I imagine at this point in time, they were just calling on the fly. JR's said before he didn't like to know the results of things. Going back to that thing that you're saying about being trying to present it as a real sports sort of presentation. So, a bit of a hodgepodge, as they say.
Yeah. I still really enjoyed the match. I just thought the finish was... It's unfortunate because I think what you wanted to see was something definitive. And I was thinking, not trying to rebook it or anything, but I was thinking they could have given Muta the win because there was a few shenanigans in there. There's the mist for a start, even though it doesn't hit Sting and things like that. You could have given him the win and then you could have just kept going with this program.
Hey, real quick, could you sum up WCW for me? Oh, no, wait, you just did.
It was totally unintentional as well.
We're back with Sole. This is getting exhausting now. Let's amp the things up a wee bit, Gordon. He's with Lex Luger, who is amped up. But I loved this match. Okay, straight up, Luger versus Ricky Dragon Steamboat. Loved it. However, talk about a hodgepodge of finish in the last match. What the fuck is the deal with this no disqualification stuff?
Yeah, I don't know, it didn't really play out very well at the start because you're thinking, everything you basically see happen, which is Luger saying before the match that he will not go out and have the match if the no disqualification rule isn't waived. He wants rid of that no DQ rule. Otherwise there'll be no match. But then, Ricky Steamboat is out first. Very popular, Ricky Steamboat.
Hold on, you can't just say comes out first. He comes out riding a wooden surfboard, carried by men. His family's there, and he's presenting. He's not just carrying, he's presenting a Komodo Dragon wearing a leather jacket with studs on it. I don't mean Ricky Steamboat's wearing a leather jacket with spikes on it. The Komodo Dragon's wearing a leather jacket with spikes on it.
Yeah,
You can't just say comes out.
I mean, yeah, that all seemed pretty normal to me. That was, yeah.
I heard rumours that if Triple H had been allowed to wrestle at WrestleMania this year, that's what his entrance was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they went a bit over the top with it. Yeah.
And
Bit over the top.
The entrance for Luger is a bit of a funny one as well, because he's doing like a big bodybuilding pose, and he seems to be on like a rotating podium, but the podium sort of stops as he's halfway still looking facing the back, so he kind of tries to spin himself and then comes out.
Yeah. But then we once again have Luger. The ring announcer announces the match as no disqualification.
Correct.
And Luger is still on the outside at this point, and he's just shaking his head. And then he's saying that unless that provision is moved, there will be no match. And he speaks to somebody who's mentioned as the promoter.
Okay.
But I didn't recognise this guy at all. But Luger then gives Steamboat 30 seconds to decide if he agrees to waive the no DQ rule, meaning the match can go ahead. If not, it sounds like Luger's just going to walk. He's out of there.
And he counts it down, and then Steamboat's like, okay. So they have the match.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I get why they did this, because it comes into play for the finish. But it was all just a bit clunky and elaborate. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Hey, I just noticed that. I've just noticed that my notes here say that Steamboat seems to be wielding a Komodo Dragon. Anyway. How good is Ricky Steamboat?
Yeah, he's so good. He's like so smooth, and everything just looks really good. And, you know, I know I've probably not seen all that many of his matches, because what I've constantly heard is that he's got matches against Ric Flair that are among the best matches ever. The match that always springs to my mind for him is the Randy Savage Intercontinental title match. Is that Mania 3?
3, I think.
And so, you know, I know the guy can wrestle, but even then I was thinking, oh, this is just really, really impressive.
Just even the way it goes off the ropes, it's just, like you say, it's smooth, fast. This is easily the best match I've ever seen Lex Luger have.
Yeah, and I imagine getting a really good match out of Luger isn't maybe the easiest.
Nah.
Yeah.
Nah, he's definitely stiff. Clunky.
And they're able to play into a story that I think, you know, much as JR's talked about how they don't have bodybuilders here, they're athletes. But, you know, Luger looks like a bodybuilder. And Steamboat is just out wrestling him. He's just taking him down all the time, countering him all the time, which is, it probably plays into the guy's strengths in terms of what they're doing, but it also just makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, he's going really fast, and he's out wrestling him. Eventually, Luger manages to slow it down a little bit, and goes to town on Steamboat's back, military pressing him, and Lex Luger goes to the top rope. I've got here.
Yeah, they're again doing a bit of sort of logical storytelling. I think Luger's going after the back with a view to applying the torture rack.
Nice.
At a point, which again makes some nice sense, and they're able to, once Luger's taken control and he is working on the back, you've got Steamboat being that again won't quit. You know, everyone respects him and he just keeps fighting type guy.
Yeah, I really like that. Underdog almost
Yeah.
Aye.
Because much as we know Luger can't wrestle, it doesn't take a lot to look at him, and especially when he's doing things like a press slam and see the power that the guy's got.
Yep. And yet, as much as we both seem to have loved this match, the finish is a bit podgy again.
Yeah.
It's not so much the disqualification. I didn't have an issue with disqualification. I think it plays at the storyline that they were fanning about at the start. It's the Luger bringing the chair in. Well, you didn't want it to be a disqualification match. I know disqualification match, but you brought the chair in, okay. Mm-hmm. It's the slingshot into the turnbuckles whilst he's holding the chair and it banging off him. It's all a bit silly.
I probably gave the storyteller a little bit too much credit when I saw Luger go for the chair, because in my mind, what was going to happen here is he was going to use the chair and get disqualified and then walk away with his title. Now, to me, once I thought about that, I thought, well, he wouldn't want a no disqualification rule because he actually just wants to bail out of this match. He wants to get disqualified. So he needs the no disqualification rule gone. And I thought maybe that makes sense, but then it's not even him that uses the chair. And also thought Steamboat, for the guy he's supposed to be, for the babyface, for, the hero that just won't give up, he seemed to just immediately start using that chair.
I thought that was it seemed out of character.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he was quite amped up. They'd been flying about the shop. Maybe it was just adrenaline. I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, even if he'd shown some, I sort of go back to WrestleMania, Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, when Roddy Piper's got, is it the ring bell or something like that, and the ref's down, and he's looking at it and he's trying to decide whether to use it, and he's like, and I think in the end he doesn't. But here, it just looked to me like Steamboat was like, chair, yes, bang.
Yeah, swings for the fences. So he gets disqualified and he goes after Luger, and they sort of keep fighting. They go in the crowd, or they're up the ramp fighting, chasing after him with the chair. It's a bit Benny Hill. But it's a really good match, and after watching it, I was just a bit like, I want to watch more Steamboat, much like I was like, I want to see more young Sting, after watching that previous one as well.
Yeah, the announcers sort of tell the story of, they believe Steamboat should get another shot. Luger brought the chair into the match, although Steamboat used it. They sort of speculate that this was maybe Luger's plan all along. And I imagine there probably is another match at some point between them. It'd be an odd way to end a feud.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that was for the US title. So Luger was a US champion there.
Yep.
Right, we're back in promo for more promos, and this time we're hyping our Wargames. And both these teams cut some promos. We've got the Fabolous Freebirds and what were they called? Samoan SWAT Team?
Samoan SWAT Team, yep.
Fatu and Samu?
Yep.
Yeah, Fatu Rikishi?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. These two, the hedge drinkers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the oh, hello. Who's joining us?
Yeah, it's just one of the cats has just come in the window and it's being incredibly loud, but he'll calm down in a minute. He'll be fine.
We've got the Samoan SWAT Team just like biting each other and banging heads with each other. They're just coming over insane. And the Freebirds just cut, there's obviously three of them there. They just cut promo after promo. They're class. What's his name? Michael Hayes cuts an absolute brilliant promo. Yeah,
and I think he was always like the vocal leader of the group. He's brilliant with a microphone, Michael Hayes.
And then we go over to the other side. So what have we got? We've got the Freebirds, Fabolous Freebirds, and the Samoan SWAT Team taking on Midnight Express, Road Warriors, and Steve Williams.
Yes.
And we start off with the Midnight Express. but that gets cut as Steve Williams is Superman flying across the camera in front of them, smiling like Hacksaw Jim Duggan on his happiest day. Like, what? I always thought his name's Dr. Death.
Yeah. And I think, he was always positioned as like a very serious, tough guy.
Like
and
a Dan Severn almost.
Yeah, it just seemed so out of place.
And this team seem a little bit fractured because they've got these guys in one bit and then we've got Hawk and Animal in a different bit. Cool seeing that the Legion of Doom in a different face paint.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's blue face paint they've got.
Yeah, I think aside from their like WWE, WWF runs, I think they used to mix it up quite a lot.
That's cool.
But I imagine Vince had like one specific look he wanted for them when they were in
the
WWE.
figures.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Hawk's a good promo.
Yeah, he is.
We're 3 years before his SummerSlam 92 meltdown. He's a good promo.
Yep.
Okay, let's get into War Games. How mad is this?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this because I've definitely not seen many War Games matches. I have a feeling I've seen one that was right sort of towards the end of WCW, and it was just a total mess. And I think
the fake Sting one, no.
I don't know if it was that. Was there one where Vince Russo was in the match or involved directly in the match?
Oh, I don't know.
And it was just an absolute mess. It was terrible. But I was thinking that, there must be really good ones out there. So I was thinking I'll enjoy this.
It was interesting. So I liked that. I've seen War Games where the next person... Should we talk about the format of War Games?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
okay. So there's 5 people on each team. To start off with, one from each team enter, and they go for 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. And then progressively, after a certain length of time, second person comes in, and there's always a team at a disadvantage. It'll go 2 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 2, until we get right up to 5 versus 5.
Yeah.
I like that they're all ringside. And they're basically champing at the bit to get in, apart from Michael Hayes, who's just like, do I have to go in? I like that.
And I believe, I would be surprised if it ever went the other way, but in the history of War Games, I don't think the babyface team have ever won the toss.
Right, that makes sense.
Because you need to have the 2-on-1 heel advantage, obviously. Yeah.
Other ones that I've seen, it's been a bit like the Royal Rumble, where you don't know who's coming down next.
All right, okay.
That was that NWO with the fake Sting and all that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that they're cage side, and JR's telling you who's due to come in.
Mm-hmm. Was that? Did you enjoy the Bad Street entrance?
The what?
The Bad Street entrance with Michael Hayes singing.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Do you know? So they've got this song, and basically, I can't remember the words. It sounds like Bad Street, da, 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 da. And he said there's different, every verse is saying something different, but he basically sings it as they're walking down to the ring.
I don't remember that at all.
I think they used to do it for all their matches where they got an entrance. It's good for a bit of heat seeking because it's just so they're just so up themselves, but it's really good.
Nice, I like that. So who have we got in the Freebirds? We've got Jimmy Garvin.
Yep.
We got Michael Hayes, who we were just talking about, and
wait a minute. Right, it was Terry Gordy.
He's a big lad.
Yes.
Aye, okay.
Yeah.
So we start off with Beautiful
Bob Eaton,
and Jimmy Garvin.
I think is it Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin? I'm sure they mentioned that in the commentary.
Used to be gorgeous, aye.
Yeah.
Aye. And this is just obviously, it's funny because these guys that go in first must be knackered by the end of it.
Yeah. It's a really odd dynamic of a match because they even mentioned this in the commentary. You can't win or lose
until
everyone's in. And it's really odd to be watching a match where you know nothing it's not nothing decisive because you can have somebody taken out, I suppose. But there's going to be nothing definitive until everyone's in the ring.
And the only way to win Wargames is the team has to give up.
Yeah.
There's no pins or whatever.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept. I wonder why WWE have never used it.
Yeah,
I know they used it in NXT, didn't they? But
yeah, I think that's the only, and I think at the time that happened, that was probably Triple H's call, just based on the sort of how long ago that was. And he would strike me as somebody that would want to recreate something like this.
Aye,
just with his, he's
Flair
got a lot of He's got a lot of respect for the past in the business, so I think he would have looked and thought we can make that a current thing. But yeah, Vince has obviously never seen the appeal.
2 rings, needs to pay for another ring. That's probably his trouble.
Yeah.
Yep, we get Eaton and Garvin starting off, and at one point it pans to Paul Heyman and he's on the mobile phone.
Yeah.
I've written, who's he actually on the phone to there? And who did we get in next?
Terry Gordy.
Gordy,
yeah.
And Garvin and Gordy just beat the shit out of Bob Eaton, basically.
Yeah.
Until Steve Williams comes in, and I've wrote JR is loving life. Steve Williams is in.
Yeah,
that's his boy. Yeah,
I've got something very similar. Dr. Death and evens things up. JR's delighted. That's his boy.
This is a much more mobile Steve Williams than I ever saw before.
Yeah, except he was probably a bit washed up by the time he appeared in WWF, because that would have been mid to late 90s.
He was in the Brawl for All, wasn't he?
He was in the Brawl for All. In fact, he was the guy they kind of wanted to win, wasn't he? It was going to be a vehicle for him, but yeah, that never really panned out.
Poor Bart Gunn. But he's fast and powerful. He's military pressing. The big lad, what's his name?
I just said it before, didn't I? Terry Gordy.
He's military pressing him. He's bouncing him off the top of the roof of the cage.
I like that. I thought that was pretty cool.
He's huge.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've always heard, and it's mentioned so often, and we all kind of knew it as almost like a running joke of that's JR's boy. And I always thought, why? What is he seeing? But see, when you see this, I get it.
Aye.
Because you could see somebody sitting, even, 7-8 years later in a booking room and thinking, why don't we bring him in? If it's that version of him, that would get over. But I think, just maybe a wee bit past it by the time it came.
Yeah. I think he'd had a good football career, hadn't he? I wouldn't know what age he would have been here, but I think that was what the whole JR thing was about. He did a good football career.
Yeah.
Before that. So, we kind of go through this pattern of the baby faces coming back, and then the next allotted time being up, we get a Samoan SWAT. We get Samu in, and poor Bobby Eaton and Dr. Death are taking a bit of a beating at this point, until Animal gets back in and just does a classic Animal, really.
Yeah.
He was your hot tag for the Road Warriors, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I quite like the fact, what does that make it when Animal comes in? That's 3-3? Yeah. Thought there was quite good positioning to bring him in, because, the crowd are going to pop for both the Road Warriors. And I quite like the fact that they left Hawk to the end, because I think, we talked about Rick Steiner earlier. I know Hawk had like a world title match against Ric Flair and things like that.
Oh, really?
And you could have seen him being a single star. I think maybe just became too associated with LOD for maybe people to want it. Because I think by that point, when they're so over as a team, you just want to see the team. But he looks every bit a huge monster single star.
Aye. And like you say, they make a big deal of him by leaving him as 5th.
Yeah.
So Animal comes in, starts doing these crazy shoulder tackles from one ring to the other. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
The crowd are going mad for it. And I've wrote here that Animal has turned the tide. The faces are on top. That is until Fatu pretty much gets in, and back to 4 versus 3, and the Samoans slow Animal down pretty well.
Yeah.
Then we get Stan Lane in. So we're left looking at having Michael Hayes and Hawk in the end. I don't know much about Stan Lane, to be honest. He kind of just seemed like a bit of a spare part. Is that unfair?
No, I don't really know anything about him either.
He was part of the Midnight Express, eh?
Yeah, I think there were maybe 2 incarnations, and I think the other was maybe the Constant.
Who's that? Do you know? I think I got them mixed up with the Rock and Roll and the Midnight.
Yeah, I can look them up. I can look them up, rather.
Beautiful Bobby Eaton and... I don't know. See if it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Well, while you're looking at it, it's like, yeah, again, back to 4-4. We cut to the side and Hayes is saying, do I have to go in? I think he's saying that to Heyman or the Paulie at the side. I like that stuff. He's still, like he's not even in the match, but he's still working. Yeah. He knows there's a camera there, working for the fans. So
the Midnight Express started off, it was Dennis Condrey and a guy called Randy Rose, and then Bobby Eaton replaced Randy Rose. So it was Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton for quite a bit of time, and then Condrey left and Stan Lane replaced him.
Who's Dennis Condrey? Not Midian?
No.
No. Nah. Oh, well.
I can't remember what Midian's name was.
It wouldn't matter.
Dennis Knight?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a class. Did you just pull that off the top of your head?
Yeah, I didn't have time to look it up. That just came from my head.
Picture him. Just picturing naked Midian flying about the place.
That takes me back.
So we're 5 versus 4 now. Michael Hayes comes in, DDTs 3 of them.
Yep.
And then just goes, so this is all happening on the right hand side of the ring. He goes over to the left hand side of the ring and just starts dancing.
Do you know, it's absolutely ridiculous, but I love it. I think he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant.
And stupidly, he's taunting Hawk on the outside.
Yeah.
Of all the people to taunt, don't taunt the fresh man that's due to come in. Hawk eventually gets in. We get the countdown. Hawk eventually gets in and just clears the ring. Yeah. He just takes everybody out. And I've got here, fair play to Bobby Eaton. He's still going strong, attacking people. He's probably absolutely a jigger by this point. So the finish. So my understanding of Wargames, you tell me if your understanding is the same, is that the team has to give up. My understanding being like the team has to agree, like, we're done.
All right, okay.
But that is not what happens here. So I've obviously got a misunderstanding of the rules.
I think because I hadn't thought or looked up or anything about the rules, when they mentioned, I think that he does say, I think JR says a team have to quit. I just took that when it happens as somebody from the team quit, so that's it. So yeah, but you could well be right. Maybe it's supposed to be like that.
So Hawk's isolated with Jimmy Garvin in the left-hand side of the ring, and he does what looks like an absolute brutal neck breaker on him.
Yeah.
Which might literally be a neck breaker. He then picks him up to do it again, but instead arches his back and hangs him up basically by his neck.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's done. Yeah. Quite anticlimactic.
You know how they say, like, one of the keys to professional wrestling is it should look like it hurts, but it shouldn't hurt. This, I mean, if this didn't hurt, it's bloody impressive because it looked like it had to.
Yeah, all of it. That neck breaker to the hangman, if that's what it's called.
Yeah,
it looked brutal.
They sort of mentioned, I didn't do any, or I couldn't easily within a few clicks find it anyway. They mentioned this having been revenge for the Road Warriors, who the announcer's reference had been in the first, why is the match? The Wargames match, and had been injured in it. So they talk about this having been sweet revenge, and I think the indication is that the Freebirds were involved in that match as well.
Okay.
But I didn't go back to look to try and find out when that match was, or if that, was it a real injury, or was it, all just storyline type thing. So I should have looked at more if I was going to speak about it, but
that's cool.
Apparently it was revenge.
So afterwards we get a little bit of a WCW classic. We get the heels. I think what happens is they isolate Animal, keep him locked in the cage, and beat him up while Steve Williams is flying up and down the side of the cage like a crazed animal.
They're trying to basically break in. I think someone's up the top trying to rip the cage open. I think you're right. I think what had happened is that the winning team have basically been doing their celebration and they've just started to leave the ring. And then it's almost like the door's been shut behind the second last one, because Animal's still in there and he's left basically 5-on-1.
Poor Animal.
Yeah.
But I guess that's getting a bit of heat on them, and probably continue some sort of Road Warriors, what's called Freebird storyline of some description, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that was some match for that to be a co-main event, so to speak. It was a good match, fun match, but different from what we're used to seeing.
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was good fun. I'd wondered going in, is this going to be a bit too significant is going to happen?
Sorry, lost you for a second there, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yes, you're here.
I enjoyed the match, but you do have to put it out of your mind a little bit, the fact that nothing of too much consequence is going to happen early on. But to be honest, with showing what was going on in the ring and the bits and pieces outside, it keeps you engaged anyway.
Aye. Yeah, 100%. Guess who we're back with?
Yes. Oh, this might be the last time, is it?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Damn it.
Gordon Soley with the NWA World Champion. A very somber World Champion, Ric Flair. This is one of the best interviews I've ever seen Flair do. He is turned down to 0. And to sort of put it into context, Flair has been out since, this is July, did we say? Yeah, Flair's been out since May. He defended the title against Steamboat. I want to say it was something like War of the World.
I think that's right, yeah.
Terry Funk was a judge during that match. After the match, he said to Flair that he wanted to fight him for the belt. Flair turned him down, so Funk, I think, pile drove him on the apron, perhaps.
Yes.
Basically, he injured him. They're making the big story is that Flair's neck is ruined. They're alluding to the plane crash he was in with his back, and saying, this is a huge risk, you coming back to fight. This could kill you, this could end your career. And that's why Flair is so somber, he's angry. They're saying Gordon Soley's asking him if he should have taken a tune-up fight. Tune-up fight? Is that not fighting a tuna fish?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Yep.
He says no, he's ready. He's ready for Terry Funk, and I love this promo from him.
Do you know, it's so different from his, because I think we're so used to him being, the confident, arrogant, over the top, and the fact he's often, doing the woos and shouting and screaming, and but this was a little bit more, you talk a bit quietly and you will drag people in. They almost have to lean in to listen to you. And I know that was always Jake the Snake's thoughts on delivering a promo. Be measured, be calm, all that kind of thing. And I think for Flair, this really stood out because he's not normally like this. And it adds to the story that it makes you believe that he's maybe not his normal self and he is concerned. And he doesn't know, that he says he's ready, but is he ready? All that kind of thing. And it's just really good storytelling.
It really, really is. It got me extra pumped for it. So we get, but in contrast, when Flair's coming out, he's coming out with like three women on each arm.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Big smile on his face.
He's got the robe, he's got the women, he's got the fireworks. It's, yeah. It kind of didn't fit what had just been said, but never mind.
He gets one hell of a pop. Fans absolutely love him.
Oh, yeah.
And the heat on Funk is unbelievable.
Yeah.
They hate him.
I imagine this would be one of those fans are waiting for you outside the venue type situations, because this is a proper heel who the crowd proper hate.
It's brilliant, eh?
Yeah, and I think, I'm only really used to seeing old man Terry Funk,
Silly.
if you like.
Aye.
And yeah, with the the Chainsaw Charlie, or some of the stuff we saw in ECW, which he was great in, but he was towards the end of his career then, and I'm looking at him thinking he's young and he's mean and he's he's going to do anything.
Oh, he's horrible.
Yeah, but he's great at it.
Aye, really is. And he dictates. This isn't a. I think we've definitely spoke before about your typical Ric Flair match where he gets the same spots in over and over. Mm-hmm. That's probably our experience of Ric Flair.
Yeah.
This was no that at all. This was dirty, horrible, brawling, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. So good. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time it was the heel Funk try to get Flair out on the floor to try and do some damage to him. Mm-hmm. Flair back in the ring. Funk outside. They started at a pace and they stopped. Funk was trying to cool off, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like they told a brilliant story with this match, despite it not being very wrestling-y.
Yeah, it's really good, and again, it plays into the story of why this would be a fight. Why this wouldn't be your typical Ric Flair wrestling match. And you've got the sort of very deliberate attempts by Funk to go after the neck. Mm-hmm. You've got Flair almost in like revenge mode, start going after Funk's neck. And I just really liked the match and the way it played out. I mentioned Sting Muta, which I really enjoyed earlier. I think this was my favourite match overall because of the story and the atmosphere and just everything that played out. It wasn't a great wrestling match, but it wasn't supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a fight. It worked really well.
It felt like Funk was constantly trying to do something sinister to Flair. He was always going for the pile driver. He has this, a Brandon iron that he comes out with. He's obviously working some sort of farmer, I don't know what the
rancher
gimmick, but not an in-your-face gimmick. It's just this is where I'm from. I'm bringing this. I'm a heel. I'm going to try and use it.
Yeah.
And then we've got our guy Gary Hart on the outside getting himself involved, similar to what he was in the Sting match as well. He's hooking a leg or trying to distract and that sort of thing.
I had a horrible thought because we've got a couple of pile driver moments. So Funk hitting a pile driver. We've got I think Flair hits two pile drivers on Funk.
Yep.
I did write for the first one. Funk maybe oversells the first one a little bit, but Flair hits him with another one, and then we've got a point later on where Funk's been hitting things like neck breakers on Flair, and then he starts removing the ring mats.
Yes,
and
that's an old classic move that you didn't see anymore, isn't it?
It is.
Pulling the mats up.
I was watching it though, and I actually thought he was going to do it. I thought they were going to do the move, so they sucked me right in because I'm watching, thinking, "Oh my god, they're going to do it!" But Flair ends up backdropping Funk onto the mats. But it obviously dragged me in enough for me to think, "Don't do that! Don't do that!"
And this being a Ric Flair match, he gets a figure four on at one point. We get Gary Hart distracting the referee, and Funk nails him with the Brandon iron in the face. Of course, he's cut open.
Yep.
We've got the Crimson Mask, and Flair returns the favour later on. I think Gary Hart throws it in a little bit
Uh-huh.
too excitedly, and it reaches his way to Flair, and he busts Funk open as well. So
Yeah.
they're both bleeding all over the place. And it goes into the. I feel like it's a slow burn up to a certain point, and then they just go crazy at each other. They're outside. They're off the ring poles and everything like that, and then very quickly we get to the finish. So our finish is Flair goes for the figure 4. Funk reverses that into, we've seen this before, figure 4 into the small package.
Yeah.
And Flair then reverses that small package and gets a 3 count.
Yeah.
Probably quite a good finish for what it is a kind of smash and grab from Flair.
Yeah.
Outsmarting somebody that's really trying to do him some damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then things just go from 0 to 100. I mean, as if that wasn't enough, as if that match wasn't enough. Muta, who we've obviously seen, appears out of nowhere and blows green mist
yeah.
into Flair's face. Keep in mind, Flair's face is covered in red blood. Now his face is a beautiful shade of green and red. Funk and Muta beat down Flair. Sting comes to help Flair. And then these 4 just go brawling all over the place.
It's really good that it's really heated and it's really well done. And, you can see the logic because we've already seen Gary Hart aligned with Muta early on. Gary Hart is Funk's manager, so that makes sense. The fact that Sting had the match with Muta earlier had already made his thoughts on Gary Hart pretty clear. So he's going to come out and try to make the save. Quite an intense brawl going on, and we've got the announcers who are. It's like they're trying to do their sum up.
Yeah,
of
trying to get out of there.
Yeah, and we can see the brawling just right there next to them.
Which makes it feel like just so authentic and chaotic, and they genuinely do seem like they're trying to get off at air.
Yeah.
And these guys are just, they're not brawling behind them, they're like through them, across them, off to the side of them.
Yeah.
And then Flair, I've got here that Flair cuts a promo looking completely possessed. In contrast to his somber promo that he cuts before the match, we're back to Ric Flair that we know. Cutting this unbelievable promo, standing next to JR, and he just looks wild-eyed, he's crazy, he's covered in the mist and blood. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And as you say, it works, because, he's been in that previous sort of somber, maybe a little bit unsure place before the match, and then he's just gone through all this, and he's amped up, and he's got the crazy eyes on the go. He thanks Sting for having his back, which they do actually end up carrying that forward to the next pay-per-view, which is good, because
what did they do?
So at Halloween Havoc, back in the days when there were many months between pay-per-views, we had...
So it went July to October, that's class.
Yeah. Wow. We had Ric Flair and Sting against Terry Funk and the Great Muta.
Love that.
With Bruno Sammartino as special guest ref.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, at least they're going somewhere with this, which I like, rather than it just being for the sake of it.
Yeah. So that was us. They kind of go off air with Flair looking crazy and them still fighting in the background and JR looking pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, and again, I like that, because he should look a bit uncomfortable. He should be looking over his shoulder and saying, "Where are they? What's going on?" All that kind of thing. So it didn't feel over the top or anything like that.
So I think Great American Bash 89, I think fair to say a pay-per-view of two halves.
Yeah.
I feel like it finished strong from, where would you say, Lex? Cornette and Paulie was good, and then from Sting forward was pretty good.
Yeah.
If you take away the tornado tag and the skyscrapers, it's fairly good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a pretty good show. As you say, there were some not so good moments in it, but what I liked was going pretty early career and seeing guys like Sting and Lex Luger who've got the sort of secondary belts here, and they're, working their way up. I just found the Wargames match fascinating because, it's such a different type of match. And then the main event couldn't have had more heat. It just really worked really well.
I think just overall, compared to what we were probably watching at this time as little kids in WWF, this was just gritty, dirty.
I think that's one of the things that's often mentioned and referenced is WWF maybe had the more kid-friendly product at the time, and, the Hulk Hogan types, the heroes, and like cartoonish characters. Whereas for real gritty wrestling, people were watching WCW, and looking back, I can see that. Because I wasn't buying VHS tapes of WCW events. I was buying them of the old WWE stuff, and don't get me wrong, some of the shows had some very good matches, but I don't know if you would find many that had as many good wrestling matches as something like this did.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was more character driven in WWF at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall enjoyed it.
I did, yeah. I got the impression when I think you messaged me, like you maybe thought I hadn't or wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think it was just, I've been quite keen to go back the way a wee bit.
Yeah.
We've obviously been watching relatively modern wrestling, and it felt quite nostalgic and almost, I don't know what the word is, but pre-nostalgic to go and visit something that I've never actually seen before. So I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, see, when you say things like nostalgic, there was this thing that I saw online, and it was probably on Twitter or something like that. It was a picture or two pictures side by side saying what I think wrestling was 25 years ago, and it had a picture of Hogan and Warrior, and then the next picture is what wrestling actually was 25 years ago, and it's a picture of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I'm like, shit.
God. It's like seeing a playlist on Spotify. It's like old school hip hop, and it's like 50 Cent in the club.
Yeah.
Nah. Old and decrepit.
Yeah.
So, where are you taking me for our next date? Okay.
So, I only decided on this after watching the 89 Great American Bash, and I thought to myself, I wonder what the similar time in WWF looks like. And then I thought, okay, I can see WrestleMania 4, 5, and I've watched those plenty, and I started thinking about something just a little bit different. I suppose you probably know the rough story about WrestleMania 4 has a title tournament. I want us to look at the reason that WrestleMania 4 had a title tournament. So what that all will stem from is a show called The Main Event. So it's The Main Event 1, because they did a few more after it, from 1988. Now, it's quite a short show.
Yep.
But I think, I mentioned to you, there's a lot before in the build up to this, then after the event that can be touched upon.
Okay.
But yeah, so The Main Event 1988, it only actually has 3 matches on it, but historically pretty significant stuff. Okay. So if you're ever wondering why was the title up for grabs in a tournament, this is going to explain it to us.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
we can discuss it all. That sounds class. And I'm right in saying that this is headlined by Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant.
Yes. So it's not the last match, but it's the headline match.
Ah, right, okay.
And I was hearing or reading somewhere that when this show, I think you told me how many people watched it, which just seemed absolutely insane. Was it 33 million?
33 million.
So apparently because some of the stuff beforehand had gone a little bit long, there's a tag match between Strike Force and the Hart Foundation, which goes on last.
Who are Strike Force?
Strike Force is Tito Santana and Rick Martel.
Nice. That's the same person, though.
No.
That's like saying, oh, it's Bray Wyatt and The Fiend versus...
Well, it's kind of like that, but they're different guys.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, Tito Santana was El Matador. And Rick Martel.
And he was Rick Martel. Like Ezekiel and Elias.
Well, I mean, because I'm not currently watching, I have to assume that they're the same person, because otherwise I don't get why it would be a storyline. But anyway, so yeah, that match actually cut off because the other shows had run long. So that match
classic. Didn't get me started. Classic Hogan.
So that match was still in progress when the show on NBC ended. So nobody knew how that tag title match ended. However, I'm assured that the full match is on the network. So we will get closure on that.
No wonder Brett hates Hogan.
You can get started here.
Aye. Back in 88. Cool. Look forward to watching that then. What I might do, if it makes sense, is maybe just chuck in Mania 4 after it, or maybe that part of it, or like the
title tournament.
Aye.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think. Yeah.
Cool. Let's do that then. That sounds class.
Excellent.
I love this wee adventure we're going on with the sort of older stuff.
Yeah, it was. I think, like you said, what we're kind of seeing is stuff we've maybe never watched before, or certainly never watched. I've probably seen every Attitude Era pay-per-view like 2 or 3 times over, and it probably gets a bit stale. And then some of the other shows we've watched that I was going to say are a bit more modern, but even things like 2002, really good. But I've seen a lot of these guys that are in the matches that are participating in them, and it's sometimes just nice to go back and see something a little bit less familiar.
You'd said that you'd considered 1998 Survivor Series. What was it that swayed you to just what you've described there? I thought to myself, I've definitely seen that. It's one of my favourites, that Survivor Series, but I've definitely seen it probably 4 or 5 times. Could you sing the theme tune?
Oh, no, for some reason I've blanked.
I'm not going to. I was going to, but I'm not going to. The thing that annoys, obviously we've not watched it, but the thing that annoys me about this, and you're supposed to be annoyed by it, but it's just the whole bringing back up the Montreal Screwjob and all that bothers me.
Yeah.
But I'm sure at the time it made sense to use, and Rock must have jumped from heel to face to heel pretty quickly in the space of that year.
Yeah, and I think what I remember fondly about it is that I'm pretty sure they got me. Like, I didn't see it coming at all when he turned heel again at the end.
Poor man, and they screwed over Mankind. He was kind of like Vince's right-hand man sort of thing, but yeah, he was never going to be, was he?
Nah, he should have seen that coming. Even if I didn't see it coming, Mankind should have seen it coming.
What was it he said to China again? Remember that last one? Did she say, kiss my ass? And he was like, well, I really enjoy kissing or something.
It's your lucky day because I'm a good kisser.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, class. Right. Well, I look forward to that in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Straight back into the time machine again. Yeah. Until then, we shall go. And looking forward to seeing Big Andre in action.
Awesome. That'll be fun.
Hit us up on Instagram at Outlaws Pod if you have ever been hit in the face with a cattle prod. Or had someone spray mist in your face.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if Dan Spivey nearly dropped you on your head, we would be keen to hear from you. Until then, we shall see you in 2 weeks. Cheers, Adam.
Cheers.